Another typhoon possible later this week on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 20th. So we've reduced our numbers of active storms. Just Don is the last one standing in the Atlantic. Calvin now reduced to a remnant low as it passes the Hawaiian Islands. Tallinn is long gone. 30 storms so far in 2023. Let's zoom in on the Atlantic then, where it is day 50 of hurricane season. Don hasn't moved that much in the last 24 hours, gradual movement towards the south-southwest, and it will continue to turn westwards and then shoot up northwestwards and then curve round. 10% chance in the main development region that we're looking at. National Hurricane Center a little bit more confident than that, 20% they're giving it. And day 68 of hurricane season in the eastern Pacific. Calvin is now a remnant low. It's still producing little bits of convection near the Hawaiian Islands, but for all intents and purposes it is dead. In the western Pacific, we've marked this area of interest, still 90% now chance of developing, and that is this upcoming typhoon threat. Not fully sure whether it will reach typhoon strength or not, but one or two models now on board, and pretty much all models on board with it becoming a system that gets a name, a tropical storm. North Indian Ocean, nothing going on here. We did have an area that we marked, I think yesterday, but it's been dropped again off the coast of India, and so nothing expected. Satellite imagery in the last 24 hours looks like this. You'll notice a few areas of storms across the US and over Central Eastern Europe, but in the tropical zone there hasn't been very large areas of rainfall really. Indochina region's probably been the most active, and around India as well. And here is Calvin then. It passed close to the big island of Hawaii yesterday and early hours of this morning, local time actually, and now it's moved well off to the west there. There's some convection still blowing up on the northern side of it, close to some of the islands, but not directly impacting them at the moment. But really, Calvin itself is struggling. Winds are well down now, probably to around 30 or 35 miles per hour. And here is the Hawaiian radar showing all of the composites there, and you can see that little band that's just holding on as it moves along those islands. A little bit of rainfall over the islands themselves, but nothing too crazy. This is Don. It's starting to look a little bit better. It's still almost exposed. The convection is only just covering the center of the storm, but it is blowing up decently. It's not a huge amount of convection. It's not a huge storm, but this certainly puts Don in good stead for the next few days, as conditions are expected to get marginally better for more development. I think it's doing okay. Sea surface temperatures then across the world. Eastern Pacific looks like this. I think it's still building a little bit along the coast of Mexico and well up the Gulf of California, 30 degrees plus, and a little bit further along the open ocean now as well in those higher latitudes. The Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico still piping hot and extending into the Bahamas and up the Gulf Stream, well over 30 degrees Celsius, and quite a large area of 32 degrees in the Florida Bay, Florida Keys area. Caribbean also looking good there, and well out to sea, temperatures 26 degrees plus. Western Pacific is boiling as well for a huge area, but it is close to normal over the main Western Pacific, around 30 degrees Celsius in large parts of the ocean there. South China Sea has cooled a little bit since we had Tallinn. Gulf of Tonkin still a hot spot though. Indian Ocean, I think that might be a glitch off the coast of Indonesia, but the rest of the Bay of Bengal, a warm spot along the West Bengal area, 30 degrees plus. Arabian Sea is half and half. Southwest Indian Ocean is still quite cool, of course, into the winter there. The Australian region, also the similar story there off the east coast of Australia. Temperatures really starting to fall in southern Queensland, and in the Pacific, South Pacific, it is starting to retreat a little bit more as well, mainly around Fiji. Compared to average, this is how it looks. Blues are below average, yellows and oranges are above average, and a few cool spots in the Western Pacific, but is generally slightly above. Eastern Pacific is still that half and half picture. The Atlantic, though, is extremely warm compared to average, particularly in the eastern part of the ocean, where temperatures are running up around 3 degrees above average. Oceanic heat content looks like this, still extending slightly into the Gulf of Mexico further. Look at the Gulf Stream extending way out there with some good OHC values, which is fascinating. Eastern Pacific also increasing a little bit as well near the coast of Mexico, looking decent. Western Pacific will always be there, I'm sure. Always got lots of energy over there and large areas waiting to be taken advantage of. This is what the GFS has in store then for the next 5 days. Computer models. It is still hinting at some sort of system that's heading up towards Newfoundland, up the Gulf Stream. No sign of that developing, and I think it will be another false alarm. But there's Don, which circles around, starts to move towards the northwest eventually, not until early on the 22nd by the looks of things, and then it does swivel around, does get fairly close to Newfoundland, but it does stay enough away not to cause any issues. Western Pacific then in the same time frame looks like this, so we can see that system 98W is its invest designation, becoming a substantial typhoon, developing very quickly around the 22nd to the 24th of July and getting up towards category 4 strength within 5 days there on the GFS model. Having said that, the GFS is one of the most aggressive, so I wouldn't put too much thought into that at the moment, but it certainly looks like it will become a significant system. Also, South China Sea, a little system there as well that the GFS is depicting. It is still very low confidence. It's one that we had marked several days ago that we dropped, and other models still aren't really happy with that one yet. Looking at rainfall expectations then, large accumulations occurring from 98W during its formation stage, and this is out to 7 days, so you can also see the development of that next system in the South China Sea if the GFS has its way, dropping huge amounts of rain off the coast of Vietnam, 33 inches, 11 inches possible over Mindoro in the Philippines, that's over 250 millimeters, and in the Western Pacific proper, 39 inches from that little spot there of 98W, but eventually it reaches the Japanese island southern Ryukyus and gets up towards 14 inches there, that's 350 millimeters. But a word of warning, the track could deviate further south than that forecast. ECMWF has been a big proponent for that. Longer range, this is day 5 to 10. GFS still consistent with an eventual Eastern Pacific system, and there it is developing into a hurricane as it moves towards the west-northwest. Usual track for an Eastern Pacific system, stays away from all of the land masses, and eventually towards the end of that 10-day period becomes a category 2 by the looks of things there on that model. Typical size, not much else to say about that. Western Pacific then, we see this massive typhoon continuing north-northwest on the GFS scenario, continuing and getting quite close to the coast of China near Shanghai, and then continuing along the coast there and shooting off north and northeastwards towards the Korean Peninsula. That second system in the South China Sea becomes a brief typhoon, actually, a small one, and it's following on the coattails of the first system into Taiwan, and then that third system forming way to the east there becomes a typhoon as well before the end of that 10-day period. But that is the GFS, speculative right now, other models don't agree. Merch store, you can scan the barcode and take a look at all of our offerings, including our still waiting for Hone t-shirts, but you're getting sick of seeing that now, and full season individual animations on request. Into the silly range, and we thought that might have been a normal track, but just look at how far the GFS keeps this thing going, and I'm baffled as to how, because there it is, it's still probably a tropical storm, and then it has a little second life possibly up there into the early days of August, way up, and I'm not sure if it's tropical or not by that point, but it still looks decent on the wind profile and holds storm force winds the whole time. Long range, super long range, I wouldn't expect that will happen by any stretch. And in the Western Pacific, the finality of 98W into the northern Korean peninsula, and then this next typhoon, which the GFS shovels along towards the west, and it takes a straight westward line into the early days of August and slams northern Taiwan as a strong typhoon, category 3 or 4 there. Reminds me a little bit of one of the 2015 storms, if I'm being honest, but there it is, and off it goes. But this is very near the end of the run, up to 16 days out, so I wouldn't be getting worried about that one yet. You can talk about all of that on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13, for tropical weather and general weather chat with weather fans from around the world. I know many of you are watching. Well, what happened on this day? It was July 20th, 1980, when we saw the peak of Typhoon Joe, which was reaching category 4 status on this day. Officially, the number is quite a bit lower, but our analysis puts it 130 miles per hour. It was veering towards the northwest, and I think it struck Taiwan or China eventually, and recurved a little bit. We also had Tropical Depression 11 behind it, which would become the next storm, Kim, and we also had Tropical Storm Frank out in the Eastern Pacific, which was heading out to sea. And quite lucky to have that image featured there, because Western Pacific imagery 1980 is very rare. Back to today, the next name in the Atlantic is Emily. Will we have a 5-star Atlantic performance of green there? Who knows? In the Eastern Pacific, next up is Dora, and in the Central Pacific, of course, we are still waiting for Hone. In the Western Pacific, the next name now is Doksuri, and it looks like it could be on the way. In the North Indian Ocean, looks like we'll have to wait longer yet again for Tej, although the main part of the season is still yet to come, the October peak usually. In the Southern Hemisphere, the next name in the Australian region is Jasper, South Pacific is Lola, and the first name on the upcoming season is Alvaro in the Southwest Indian Ocean. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.